So this afternoon we are presenting to you GDPR and MIS, and we're going to look at data retention and also the management of data in your school. We're going to cover some key areas. So we're going to look at things like pupil deletion tools, how to manage single central record, retention of data, where there'll be opportunities as we go through the different sections to ask questions. You can ask those questions either in the chat, and the chat bar is available from in the meeting bar that's floating in front of you, where you've turned your mic off and you've turned your camera off. You will see a tiny little speech bubble. If you press that speech bubble, you can type questions that you have into the speech bubble there in the chat, and we'll do our best to pick those up and address them as we progress through the session. If we don't answer them straight away, it's because we're going to answer them at the next pause point, but please get them in there and we will go through and address anything that comes up from you. We'll also welcome any ideas this afternoon. If any of you are already using parts of what we're presenting and you've been quite successful with it, or you've got anything you think would help other schools to implement it, please do feel free to share as well as adding questions in. We want this to be your session and for you to get as much as possible from it. This afternoon on the call we have different representatives of Turn It On. I'm Martin, I am DPO for the company. I head up GDPR Services amongst other things. Also from the GDPR team we've got Charlie Holmes, and Charlie you should be able to see on camera as well. Charlie, you want to say hello?
Everyone.
We've also got from the MIS team, we've got Rachel and we've got Michelle. Rachel and Michelle, would you like to say hello as well?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Perfect. See, the tone of the afternoon will be in small chunks. We won't try and overwhelm you with too much in one go. And after each small chunk, we'll have a pause point where we can just review what we've done so far and for you to be able to ask those questions. There's quite a few people on here, so it is best to ask those questions in chat and not to unmute your mics unless we say to unmute your mics. We're going to start this afternoon with looking at subject access requests and PDOs. Rachel will be presenting that part of the presentation from a GDPR MIS point of view. But first of all, just wanted to talk about when you might need to run one of those reports in SIMS, and just how important it is to get that information accurate and correct. So subject access requests, or SARs under GDPR, used to be something that you had to pay for under the old Data Protection Act 1998, but they are now free under the GDPR 2018. When you receive one as a school, if you've got GDPR support with Turn It On, we always encourage you to contact the GDPR help desk. We've got a dedicated team there that can work with you and advise you on how to proceed. But when you receive the subject access request, usually the person making the request will list or detail the information they would like. If they haven't, and they've been very broad in the subject access request, we always advise you to go back to them and clarify it, see if you can narrow down the field. Very often there'll be a specific piece of information or a group of information that the subject access request is made about, and that helps you to process it internally, but also helps them to get what they need and stop them having to ask a second time. Subject access requests can be made by parents, legal guardians, or if you're joining us from a secondary school, students can also make subject access requests themselves. You can also get them from members of staff that might make subject access requests about the data that the school holds on them. The first thing to do on a subject access request is verify that the person is eligible to receive the data. If it's coming from maybe a legal representative and you aren't quite sure if they should have the data, the first thing you should do is verify. Once you've verified the authenticity of the person making the request, you need to respond, let them know that you've received the subject access request and that you will deal with it in 1 calendar month. It used to be 30 days, but the ICO changed that roughly a year ago, and it's now 1 calendar month. So for instance, if you received a subject access request on the 5th of July, you would have to hand it back on the 5th of August. Subject access requests have to be processed regardless of school holidays. I didn't set that rule. That's determined by the ICO. I fully appreciate the complexities of that, and you might not have staff that are contractually obliged to work. But if you receive one on the last day of term and you need to work through the summer holidays to get that information back, we would advise you to do so, however difficult that is. If you fail to comply with the subject access request, the person making it can then complain to the ICO, and there will be further action taken by the ICO against the school. And that could be simply publishing you on a website to say that you didn't reply in the appropriate time frame, or it could come back to financial sanctions and fines against the school. You need to reply in the 1 calendar month that's stipulated, regardless of when you receive it, even if it is during a holiday. There are some people that may choose to put them in on the last day of term for particular reasons. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that, but the school has responsibility under the GDPR to process those subject access requests. One of the areas where you can frequently clean up and collect a lot of information all together is around running a report in Sims, and that's what Rachel is going to show you next. So I'm going to stop presenting my screen, and I'm going to ask Rachel to take over. And she's going to share from her end what she's got in running the report. And Rachel, at this point, I will hand over to you.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, so Sims can provide the majority of the information you need for a subject access request. I'm going to hop into Sims. Okay. There's a couple of things you'll need to do before running the subject access request. The first is Capita suggests you delete any orphaned documents, and that's done through Tools, Housekeeping, Document Management Server, and Maintained Orphan Documents. I'm not going to go in there at the moment because it takes ages to load and we'll have to chat about the weather. But in there is a delete button, and Capita recommends you delete any orphan documents. The next thing you'll need to do is to make sure that the person has permissions in Sims to run the report. So if you're System Manager, if you go into Focus, System Manager, and Manage Users, you can search for the user, and I'm going to give Andrea Batchley access to run it. In panel 3 groups, on the right hand side, you add Data Protection Officer rights, and that's the only right that will enable you to run the subject access request. You would then save, and then if Andrea was logged into Sims, she needs to log out of Sims and log back in again to be able to run the report. So the report sits in routines, data out, and person data output. So I've been busy running some, and in here we'll list any person data outputs that have already been done. You can export this if you need to. It gives you information about who it was run on, what their role is. So you can run one of these for students, staff, contacts, who ran it, where it went to, and any notes attached. So to run a new one, I'm just going to do a new. I'm going to need to choose a location for it to go to, and it defaults to the last place I ran it to. But obviously you need to think about the information that's in there. There's going to be confidential information in this report, so you want to make sure it's going somewhere that lots of people don't have access to. So I'm going to pop it in my OneDrive. And I can add a log note, so you might decide to put in the reason why the subject access request is run or who's requested it. So I'm just going to say it's been requested by Mr. Person. I'm then going to search for the person it's being run for. And it's doing a match on anyone in my database. You can see there's various people from contacts to staff to students in here. I'm going to run it on Shauna, and I'm going to generate the report. An agreement comes up that you'll need to read, and in here it encourages you to review the report and redact any information that could breach confidentiality. So if another child is mentioned in the report or another person, you'll need to redact that information before you give it to the parent or person who's requested it. So I'm going to tick to say I've understood it and continue. So it's going away and generating. So we have to chat amongst ourselves for a moment, but it's collecting a lot of information. It comes out in Word, which means you have the ability to redact. And here it is. It's a very long report. And that will have saved to the location that we requested it to. Okay, I'm just going to have a look and see if there are any chats. No, all good. Okay, in which case I'm going to hand back to the GDPR team who are going to look at retention of students.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, let me just reshare my screen for everybody. So the next section of the presentation is going to focus on data retention from a GDPR point of view. Some of you on here will have already touched upon this with the GDPR services from Turn It On, but we are just going to cover the requirements under GDPR for data retention and then look at how you might enforce that in school. And we'll look at relevant assets such as the Information Record Management Society document, and then we can take some questions at the end of this section. So the legal reason for retention comes under a couple of articles, but the first is Article 5, Recital 1E, and that means that you need to make sure that you're not keeping the data of data subjects any longer as necessary or than the original purpose that it was intended for. For those people that aren't as familiar with GDPR, a data subject is a living individual, which is a horrible cold term set by the ICO, but it means in real terms a pupil or a student or a member of staff or a parent or a legal guardian. They're all data subject groups, and you'd hold a certain amount of data on those different data subject groups. The other article is Article 89, and that's Recital 1. And that means that you need to put the appropriate protection in place, that once you have this data and you're not keeping it, that you are going to protect it and safeguard the rights of those that you hold it on behalf of. So that's really important to make sure that you've reviewed in your school what's called the data mapping piece of work, which a lot of schools completed in 2018, 2019. The ICO requires that piece of work to have been completed within 18 months of GDPR coming in. So we're well past the date for it to be due to be completed now. And that should be a large document in school. Usually it can be a spreadsheet, sometimes it's dedicated web services, but it should detail the retention of data. This is designed to protect the rights of the data subjects that you hold the data for. Make sure that they're informed of where you're holding it in school and what security is in place. They've also got access to it, which is what the subject access requests is about. They've got the right to rectification, which normally in school is quite easy. Somebody drops the school an email, or they give the reception desk a call and they say, look, I've changed my mobile phone number, or I've moved house. They also have the right to erase. So if you're still retaining data and it's past its retention date, they can request it to be erased because you may not have a legitimate reason to be processing it any longer. You should restrict the processing so it's only for the purpose that it was intended. And you'll have documents such as privacy notices. And the privacy notices tell parents and pupils or staff exactly how the school collects and processes their data. Should also be portable and moved between schools. As the MIST will tell you on here, it could be something like you generate a CTF from SIMS and it transfers between schools. We're all pretty good at that. So in schools, it's not so much of an issue. Outside of schools and in industry, it can be more of an issue. You have the right to object. That's why we ask for consent. And also there shouldn't be any automated decision making that takes place on their behalf because it will profile them, and that profiling can be detrimental to them. So personal data is one type of data that we may collect, and we often have a lot of this around in schools. It's those biographical details of a person's life or them as an individual. It might infringe their rights if it becomes available where it shouldn't be. It has several identifiable factors in it, so it should be that the person isn't compromised by you either collecting that personal data or then sharing it with another company. And there might be a legitimate reason that you use a third-party organization to share and process your data. However, you need to check those third-party organizations, and that's all part of the data mapping I mentioned earlier. And those checks should be very thorough before you hand any data over. More seriously, as well as personal data, you've got personal sensitive data, and that gives you some of the areas highlighted at the bottom of this slide. They are the ones that usually have higher levels of security in place, or there might be different restrictions. So if you have a Sims account, it could be that you've got a higher level of access to modules in Sims, which allows you into some of this information that maybe the basic level of access for other people in school may not permit them to see. And then it could go all the way to the top. You could see this is someone's HR records or employment records if you are in the school and you're involved in that side of things. So the ICO means, the ICO guidance means for the school that you need to be really clear and transparent with what you're collecting, reason for collecting it, and that's what the privacy notice should do on your behalf. You should also have a very clear retention policy. It doesn't have to be a dedicated policy written by the school. You can adopt other policies out there. Look at one at a later date. And all of those retention times should be logged against the assets in your information asset register, and the information asset register will list all paper and electronic assets for the school, and it will have against it the retention times for each asset. You really need to communicate that across all so that everyone understands whatever their role is, how long they can keep data for, and whether that data is going to be available at a later date or whether that data already erased. Here's an example asset register. This is a very small section of it. But a column there called name of assets. On the name of assets, you can see there's a database in Sims, or it may be a paper pupil file, and you should have a very clear list of the retention times. Here we've adopted IRMS, which is what I spoke about earlier. The ICO recognises that, as do many other organisations. It should be very clear as to how long you're going to keep that data for and when it be erased from the school. Now that could be shredding paper, or it might be electronic erasure, or it could be that you have to use a tool in Sims, such as the tools we're going to show you later. The IRMS is a dedicated toolkit. It was free in 2018, but it's been developed considerably since then, and other companies have had input into it. To subscribe to the IRMS, paying subscription a year, you can't have one document and then share it across a multitude of schools or a trust. It goes on a copyright basis, so you need to have purchased it and own it per school. It's going to get updated annually, so the next update for the IRMS is due this month. It should happen later in July. When the version change occurred from 2018 to 2019, there were a lot of changes. There was about 2 sides of A4, and we published all those changes in the GDPR newsletter for our GDPR schools here. There's going to be further changes this year. You'll get a copy of the new document at the end of the month, and you need to go through your information asset register and update or check your retention times against each other. And where they change, you need to communicate that to everybody in school that are affected, either in a particular team, be it somebody in the admin office, it could be the head teacher, it could be the safeguarding officer. If things move around, you need to make sure that that's being adhered to in school and it's being followed. So we've got different services to support that, and we'll come back to look at those later on in the future. I'm going to pass back over to a member of the MIS team. But before I do that, has anybody got any questions they want to ask me? I apologise that the audio dropped out there a little bit in between. I can see a few people mentioning that the audio is a bit choppy, and we'll do our best to clear that up for you. I'm just going to look in the chat. So can you change the report only to pick up certain information, e.g. exam results? I think that might be one for Rachel. Are you on here?
I'm on here, yeah. The report is standard. It is a Word document, so you could delete the bits out that the parent or a person hasn't asked for and just give them the exam results. The exam results will appear on that report, so you could remove the bits that aren't requested. Alternatively, use a different type of report out of Sims that only reports on the bit that you're interested in.
I haven't got any more questions in the chat, but does anybody want to unmute a mic and ask anything about data retention? Otherwise, I'll pass over to the next section of the presentation, which I think from memory is Michelle. No questions?
It's the tumbleweed moment, so I'll take over.
Yeah. Over to
All
you.
right. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick look at the single central record. Now, you don't need to actually record your single central record in Sims, but there is functionality in there. So I'm going to share my screen if you bear with me a moment. So what would be the benefits of recording single central in Sims? First of all, you know you've got secure access. You've got to have a username and password to be able to log on, and also you've got to have the right permission group in Sims to be able to let those authorized staff have access. So not everybody's going to be able to see that data. All your staff data then becomes held in one location. So if you are asked for a PDO, if you've got your single central record sitting inside Sims, then that information will come out. At the moment, obviously, it sits outside, possibly on a spreadsheet. So therefore, the benefit would be bringing it in online, so you can pick off your DPO. What else happens? So when you have somebody that leaves, they're automatically excluded from the single central record report that we provide, and all your historical data is held securely as well. So one of the benefits as well is somebody leaves and they come back, you can then put a whole new raft of single central record items on for them. And one of the other benefits, if you have our report, is that you can also include your governors and volunteers and those other members of those other people that may need to go on there, such as after school clubs supervisors and PE leaders. So I'm just going to show you where obviously the single central record sits inside Sims. It obviously sits inside a person's record. So I'm just going to pop through and have a look at what it looks like for Belinda Bates. So pull up Belinda's records. Now, if you do decide to go down the route of recording your single central record in Sims, you've got to bear in mind that the person putting the data on is going to see all of the employment details tab as well. You can customize your permissions, but it's not something we recommend because they can be a little bit glitchy. So it's definitely worth remembering that anybody that's entering this data for the checks will see it and that they have permissions to actually see the box underneath, which is contractual information. So as you can see on here, under the employment tab, I have got the checks area. And with the checks, I've got all of the different possible checks that are listed here. So what you do in Sims is you will actually enter a record for each of the checks. So you do a new at the side and you add an appropriate check. So a DBS check or whatever it might be. You add in the date that you requested it, the clearance level and the document number, and then you would save that. And what happens is it then is produced here. Let's just remove that one I created by accident. So what does that actually look like when it comes out on a report? If I then just show you, you would run the report. So it's reports, run report. Capita do provide an Ofsted report, and it's this one at the top here. It's not one that works very well, so we've actually designed and produced our own, and so I'm going to run this out from here. I'm not going to run it because it takes a moment, but I've got one I prepared earlier. So this is the single central report and how it looks when it comes out of Sims using Turn It On report. You can see you've got all the headings across the top, and then each check for each of the things that you require for the safeguarding checks is all listed below. So we produce this report and we update it regularly when we have feedback from Ofsted or if there's any changes, and we make sure that our report's always up to date. So that's the single central record. So I think I'm done. Has anybody got any questions on that?
Michelle, there's a couple in chat. There's one from Maria at Hallfield, I believe. In the single central record, we also add contractors such as catering staff, gardeners, and etc. Are you suggesting that we, and I can't see the bottom bit, it's gone off the bottom of the
Seymour, hang on. Are you suggesting we add their data Sims? Yes, you can. So if you already have them on a single central record outside of Sims, it may be in a spreadsheet, you can actually put that information into Sims. Now, the way in which you enter it excludes them from the staff area because you don't want them popping up on your staff reports. So as long as they don't have an employment start date, if you put them onto Sims, then you'll be able to gain that data and get them onto your single central record. Any other questions?
There's one more. My Sims is looked after by another company. not TIO. How can I get a copy of your report?
I'm afraid it's one of those things that you do have to actually buy it from us, and so the only reason for that is to ensure that we know who's got it and that we can put the time and investment into keeping it up to date. So it is a turn-on product that we sell. Maybe something we can think about selling it outside if it's going into Sims, but obviously that's something we could discuss or think about. Any other questions?
That's it in the chat. Does anybody want to unmute and ask a question?
Okay, I'm passing back over then. I think I'm going to Rachel now. So I'm going to hand back over to Rachel.
Hello. Okay, so I'm now going to look at deleting data that we no longer need in Sims. So lots of data goes into Sims. Some of it's required for a period of time and that then passes. So I don't know if you remember a few years ago, the DfE had a wonderful idea of collecting all of the information about country of birth, nationality, proficiency in English that the school spent many, many hours collecting, and then the DfE decided to no longer collect it. If you have that data in your databases, the DfE say you shouldn't really keep it unless you can think of a good reason for keeping it. So there are patches available to get rid of the data. We've run the patch on our schools, but as you get data in from other schools via CTF and so on, you may find that that data creeps back in again. So there are patches to delete country of birth, nationality and proficiency in English if you need those deleted. Another place that schools will quite often retain data is in user-defined fields. Now, user-defined fields are a really useful tool in Sims where you can create extra fields where you haven't already got somewhere to store the information. As if there isn't enough places in Sims already, you can create your own fields. And I often log on with schools and see lots and lots of historic information. And if you no longer need that information, then I'm going to show you a way to delete it. So let me just share my screen with you and nip back into Sims. So the place where you set up your user-defined field sits in Tools, Setups, and User-Defined Fields. If I can find them, there it is. If I search, I can see what fields I've got set up. Now, I haven't got very many in my system, but there are schools with lots and lots of user-defined fields in there. Now, you can go and make them inactive. So if I didn't want to have media permission active anymore, I can go in and delete the active tick. That'll stop any new data going into that field, but it won't delete any information that's currently held in there. If I want to delete information that's there, say if attending breakfast club was only used last academic year and isn't currently used this academic year, I can go in, highlight it and press the delete key at the top of the screen. It's going to give me a little warning to say that not only am I deleting the field, but I'm going to delete 17 values associated with the field. So 17 children have got information in against this user-defined field. It will be deleted. Now, if you're going through doing a lot of this, I recommend you have a backup done first because there is no undo on this. But I'm going to go and say, yes, I don't want that anymore. And that will have gone and got rid of that information on the child's record. So I'm going to close that area. Now we're going to look at bulk data deletion now. So Capita have been working on a solution to be able to go in and bulk delete student data. Gosh, you've got to have your teeth in for that. Absolutely, you need a backup before doing this. There is no undo, and you're deleting a lot of information in one go. So I'm going to show you where it sits. It sits in routines, student, or if we're on a primary school database, that'll say pupil. Historically, we've always deleted one student at a time via delete student, and that's still there if you're deleting the odd student. If you want to bulk delete student data, that can be done from that option there. I'm just going to walk around the screen very quickly to tell you what's in here. At the top, there's like a stop clock, and I'll show you how that works in a short while. Underneath there, you've got the opportunity to choose dates. So these dates here are a period of time during which a child might have left. So you can choose to delete information, say if a child left between 2003 or 2004. You can only delete up to 15/16 at the moment, because data after that is still integral to things like Discover and other products that Sims uses. So you can't delete anything less than 3 years old. I'm going to look at, oh gosh, what year am I going for? 2010, 2011, because I know I've got some data in there. I know that I've deleted all the stuff from the early years, but I've got some in 2010 and 2011. You can then decide what area you want to delete from. So I could decide to delete all student data if I wanted to, or I can delete from certain data domains. So if you decide that you don't want to keep your conduct data, for instance, from 2010-11, that it's no longer needed in the school, I could tick that, go through search and find my students and delete the information. So you can delete parts of your information or delete all student data. I'm going to leave it as conduct data to show you the rest of the process. If I chose all the data, then it's obviously going to take longer for it to run through. If you're deleting data, I'd also choose a time where you haven't got heavy use of the system. So if you're in the middle of your registers, probably not the best time to do this. It is a little bit memory heavy. So, and if you're doing all student data, possibly out of school hours to run, it's a little bit like doing things like some of the other heavy processes in Sims, try and do it out of school hours. So I've chosen my year. I've chosen I'm going to delete conduct data, and I'm going to search for any students who left in that year who had any conduct data. And towards the bottom of the screen, I'm going to just get rid of that lovely picture of Michelle, is a list of students who left in that year who had conduct data. And these column headers I can sort and filter by. So I can sort on name or filter or so on. On the left-hand side, you'll see that certain children are ticked. And it's defaulting to ticking anyone whose class has never been on the SEN register and who is not protected. So can you see little Jeffrey here? He has been protected. So if you have any children who you know that you are going to want to retain their data for longer than other children, so if there's been a child protection case or something, you know you're going to need that data longer. If I go into a student record, you can protect them from being deleted from the bulk data deletion. So I've gone into Chris Aaron's record, and in here is a little tick box, and I can tick that, and now he won't be able to be deleted from the bulk data deletion tool. So I'm going to go back to my bulk data delete. As I said, I can filter on these columns, so I can have a look and see who are my ever SEN. I can look at who's never been on the SEN register. The ever SEN is anyone who's had either an education, health and care plan, a statement, SEN support, good old school action plus. It does not include gifted and talented, and nor does it include children who've only ever had no recorded against them. Now, I know that some schools have got some children in their database who have just got an N for their SEN status. It doesn't include those as ever SEN. It'll look back before that N and see if they've ever been on another category before that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some children. So I'm going to go and delete all of them. It's definitely not going to delete little Jeffrey because he's got protected against him. And you may in the first instance just cautiously just do 1 or 2 and see what happens. But I'm going to delete all of them. At the top of the screen, I've got my start delete, which when I press, it's going to give me a warning. It's going to tell me how many children that I'm going to permanently delete. So there's no undo on this. Permanently delete data for 75 students who left within or before academic year 10-11. It's going to delete the conduct information, and it is including 40 ever SEN children. So it's going to warn you if you've accidentally ticked an ever SEN that you might want to reconsider. I'm going to do an OK on this. It's just test data. So I'm going to do an OK, and it's going to give me yet another warning. So read the agreement. It talks about the GDPR regulations on there, and I'm going to continue. And this is my little stop clock at the top. So it's whizzing through. I can stop the delete if I want to. I've only got, oh no, it's managed to do all of them. It was quicker than I was expecting. I'm just left with Jeffrey. Obviously, there's not a huge amount of data sitting there. It's gone through very, very quickly. But had it been taking longer, or I'd had more children to delete, I could have carried on doing stuff in Sims while it whirred away in the background. I can carry on using the rest of Sims. Unlike other processes like building the academic year, where you're stuck waiting for it to go through, this one you can carry on working in Sims and come back in and check on later. But my system's obviously working very speedily. I didn't get the opportunity to do that today. Once you've gone ahead and deleted any pupil data, you might want to then consider deleting any unlinked contacts that have been left behind. And you may want to do that anyway, because every school I log on to has unlinked contacts sitting around. So I'm going to close that area and I'm going to go to Tools and Housekeeping and delete unlinked contacts. We recommend you do this one first before the persons. So if I go into delete unlinked contacts, search on the top left hand side of the screen, and it's going to list any contacts that don't have any students or other staff connected with them. It could be that you've had applicants that have been deleted off, or students that have been deleted off, or you've been doing a tidy up and you've had duplicate contacts. Any one of those will sit in this little area here. I can choose to delete all of them. And if I hit the delete key on the top left hand side, that will go through and tidy that information up for me as well. I'm not going to do that because you don't want to sit and watch my screen wearing through. Once you've done that, there's one more delete process to go through, and that is Tools, Housekeeping, and delete unlinked persons. Now, most of those will have been dealt with when you did your unlinked contacts, but if there's any left behind, they'll be sitting in here, and you can go and have a good old tidy up in there as well. All of those processes I've shown you don't have any undos, so make sure you mean to do it when you do it, and have a backup if you're doing a big deletion housekeeping day. So I'm going to have a look and see if there are any questions around that. Michelle, can you see if there's any questions?
Yeah, there was one. Rowena was asking about deleting contacts earlier. Did that answer your question, Rowena, about deleting contacts? Are you there, Rowena? You can just respond in the chat if you want to.
Okay, we can always pick it up later if Rowena responds. Okay, so I'm going to pass back to Michelle to look at deleting staff. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand back over to Michelle.
Just before Michelle starts, I'll jump in there from a GDPR perspective because I can see quite a few questions in chat around that. So it's set out in the IRMS, which is recognised by the ICO. It's date of birth plus 25 years for all pupil educational records in Sims. So you need to follow that regardless of what type of pupil they are in school or what they may be categorised as. And you simply say when they hit 25 years of age, that's a trigger for you to go through your Sims database and run the pupil deletion tool and take out the pupils. Otherwise, you should keep them in your Sims database. And that's for all sorts of reasons, such as future investigations, or if they want to make a request of data that the school still holds. There's many, many reasons. We could have a whole session on it alone as to why that data should remain available, but you are allowed to keep it up to the fact they are 25 years of age. Mm-hmm. And that's in section 3 of the IRMS.
So there's also a question from the Hillhead asking about how to make a backup. We recommend that all schools have an offsite backup run every night. You may, if we do your MIS support, you may be getting backups done through us. You might be doing it through another company. If we do them, then we're very happy to check that a successful backup was done the previous night. Or you can do a manual backup, and this really is going to test my Sims knowledge, but it sits within the system area of Sims. Gosh, it's been so many years since I've done one of these. The techs usually do them. I'll see if I can share my screen and see if I can manage to do one of these. It sits in Focus, System Manager, and System Manager 6. Good old System Manager 6. Haven't been in here for years. And in here, you can run a backup. You can also do one through DB Attach. So, oh gosh, how do I run a backup in here? Create backup, there we go. So you can either create a backup within System Manager, or you can do one through DB Attach, or you can contact us to see if you've had a backup done during the night. Either way, we're very happy to help sort that out with you. Any other questions? How does someone be an unlinked person? I think it would be people like agents when you've been doing a tidy up of your agents, your doctors and things like that. So people who've not contacts, they're like doctors and things like that. They would be your unlinked persons who've come away from being linked with a child.
And you are allowed under GDPR to retain certain data fields. So you're allowed to keep the full name and surname and the year of entry and the year they left. And you can claim that under alumni purposes. You don't have to delete the entire record. However, you can if you wish to. So you got the choice within the school. Michelle, I think we should come over to you for stuff.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just going to have a very quick look at staff deletion area. It's nowhere near as comprehensive as the pupil side, and never has been. It's been notoriously difficult to delete people, staff. I never understood why it's harder to delete a member of staff than it is a pupil. But anyway, I'm going to share my screen. Whoops, go to Sims. Right, so where do we delete staff? There's only really a couple of scenarios where you'd be looking to delete staff records at the moment. There is no bulk update sort of deletion of staff. The reasons you may do it is because you've got a duplicate record, or it may be that you've pre-entered information for somebody that was due to start the next academic year. So for instance, now you'll be entering your teachers and your new staff for September, and actually none of those turned up, or one of them didn't turn up, and you need to remove their records. In 2019, the spring upgrade, CAPA did relax some of the deletion criteria, but not vastly. So they now allow you to be able to delete anything that where you're linked to the timetable, or if your behaviour management linked. So I'm just going to take you through where you would do staff deletions. So it sits under routines and staff and delete staff. And I don't know how many people have ever used this area. What we're going to do is I'm going to look at somebody that I can't delete to start with. I know that Belinda Bates is due to be leaving us. I'm going to just quickly pop her details in here and bring her up. So I'm just going to open up Belinda's record. Now it's gone off and it's gathering data for Belinda, and it's going to find out if we can or cannot delete her. And as you can see, item number 2 there under the data summary is a big fat no, you can't. Now, as soon as somebody has got a current or future contract, has got any absences, has got previous name, or is linked to any of the other areas in Sims where it needs to keep a record, such as dinner money, I think some of the other areas, cover and things like that, if they've got any details linked in there, then you're not going to be able to delete them. So this person cannot be deleted. So I'm going to have a look at my next person I want to get rid of, and it's a lady called Lauren Greene. Now, Lauren was due to start with us in September as a teacher, but actually she's let us know that she's not coming now. So some basic details were put in for her. So her name and her address, her date of birth, her address and her email address, her next of kin, all of that was added along with an employment start date, but no contract. So in theory, we should now be able to delete Lauren. So I'm going to open her up. It's gathering the information on Lauren, and can you now see that under the data summary it says this staff can be deleted. Now this was due to the relaxing of the criteria for deleting staff in the 2019, so whereby you may not have been able to historically, for those people you can now get rid of those people that never joined you and weren't actually on the register for things like contracts and absences. So I'm just going to hit the delete button at the top. Now when I delete it, everything associated to that person is going to go. There's no undo, there's no audit trail. So you do need to make sure that you're deleting the right information when you do this. If you're dealing with duplicates, it's very important to make sure you're deleting the correct record. So we advise that when you go in, is the person you want to delete, is just give them a new name with XX or ZZ in the front, just so that you can identify them very clearly. So I'm just going to press the delete button. And it's warning me that they're going to delete. And so I said, yep, that's absolutely fine. I'm completely happy. It's irreversible. So it goes off. It says it may take a few moments. There you go. Lauren has now been deleted. And there'll be absolutely no record of Lauren on Sims anymore. So that's deleting. Has anyone got any questions on deleting staff? Has anybody seen any questions pop up?
None in the chat, Michelle.
Super. So in terms of removing staff from your system, what's the GDPR on that one, Martin? can we start deleting our staff?
So on that one, it can be quite complex depending on when they leave and their contract. So I would say check the RMS, because there's quite a range of scenarios about when they come out, and you need to check it's the right scenario for your school. We'd be here for about half an hour alone if I went through every scenario, so I'm not going to bore people stupid with it.
I mean, at the moment there is no option to delete those people that have been linked with other items in Sims, and so at the moment it's a matter of just anonymizing the data. Okay, we're going over to Rachel now for Parent App Lite.
Okay, I thought it might be worth having a look at Parent App Lite. I know a number of schools are already using it, but I wondered whether it'd be worth sharing it. It is Capita's response to GDPR in terms of trying to minimise data collection sheets being lost and well, the cost of printing and so on. I'm just going to quickly whiz through a little PowerPoint, and then I'm hoping technology is going to work for me and share the mobile with you. So yeah, it was designed by Capita in response to GDPR, and it removes the need to print data collection sheets. It is free. It is part of your Sims annual entitlement. And it's also free for parents to download the app from the App Store. In terms of setups, if you decide you want to use the Sims Parent App Lite, you can register. Now, I know that's a really long address. But if you were to Google Capita Sims Parent App Lite, you will find it. There's a little register button towards the bottom of the screen, and you can put in some contact information in there to register. A registration email is then sent to the nominated contact at the school from noreply@sims.co.uk, and notoriously it goes into junk, so just keep an eye out if you register in your junk inbox. There's a very small amount of technical setup. I can do it, and I'm not technical, but if you need any help at all, then do give us a buzz. I'm just going to very briefly show you the product admin to show you the kinds of gosh, what am I saying? Controls you've got as a school to work out who gets access to the app and what data gets put on there. So the first thing is you control who gets invited to use the app. So you can invite new users, re-invite them if they've lost their emails, and you can also unregister users if you decide that someone shouldn't have access. Only parents with parental responsibility can. Oh, can anyone hear me? Yes. Yeah, okay, sorry, someone told me I'd gone quiet. If someone has a court order out against them, they immediately lose the ability to use the app. In terms of inviting users, you can either invite staff to be administrators of the app, or parents, obviously, to fill in the data collection sheets. The students are there for another app. You can then decide what data is available on the app. So if I go into the data collection settings, I can completely disable data collection if I want to. And there are some things that you as a school would need to have a little think around. And this is where some schools have decided actually this isn't the product for them, which is absolutely fine. You need to decide it's the right thing. But the first question is around whether the contact can only see their own contact details, or whether they can see contact details of other contacts related to their child. And the discussion often goes around split families, and if one parent doesn't want the other parent to be able to see their mobile number or whatever, then you may decide to say that contacts can only see their own information. But that's a decision you have to make for the whole school, not just for individual families. So that's something to consider if you're going to think about using the parent app. You can then decide whether parents should be living at the same home as the child to fill in the data collection sheet, or whether separated parents can both fill in the data collection sheets. And you can then decide what parts of Sims the parents can view and update. So we've got contact information, cultural information. Sometimes schools decide to turn that off. I mean, how many times is a child going to change their first language or ethnicity or so on? So you can very quickly, if you decide not to have that on there, you can hit the cross and turn it off. So you can make your decisions there of what areas you want the parents to update. And there are some more admin-y type things down here, which I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail on, but you can choose, for instance, who gets notification to say a data collection sheet has been completed. Right, I'm now going to attempt to share my mobile phone with you, which isn't always that successful, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so hopefully, can you see my mobile appearing on the screen? Excellent.
Yes, you can.
So in here, I'm using an Android, so it's going to obviously look very slightly different on an iPhone, but I have got the Sims Parent app installed here, and my child, Kira Knightley, is at a school that uses the Parent App Lite. If I had more than one child, they would appear in a list here. Equally, if my children went to more than one school, then if they're both using Parent App Lite, you'd use the same app to update children despite which school they go to. If I go into Kira here, I can update. I've got everything turned on here, all of the possible areas. So I can update her home address, for instance. If I go into addresses, I can add or move a home address. I can update phone or email addresses for the child. I can pop into the medical conditions, and maybe I need to inform the school that she has eczema. So I can literally just toggle the button across. This is the list that I have in my Sims database here. I've got quite a long list of medical conditions. If a parent wants to report that a child has a medical condition that doesn't exist in your Sim system, they can go ahead and type in a new condition in there. So even if it doesn't appear in your Sims list, they can still add in new medical conditions. So I can see in here I've made no changes except for medical details, and I might want to go in and add a dietary need as well. I'm going to say she's gluten-free. There we go. So once I've finished, I click Finish Changes at the bottom. I'm not actually going to press that button because once I've done that, I disable my phone from being able to make any changes until the school takes those changes in. And if anyone wants me to display anything else, I've got that stuck for us. I will just very briefly show you the menu though, because in here I can see the school details. I can actually phone the school from here. I can see all the holidays and so on as well. So going back to my other screen, back to my PowerPoint. Once the parent has filled in the data collection sheet on the phone or web browser or however you're going to fill it in, any contacts in the parent app that, any staff in the parent app that have been nominated to receive emails will get this email come through just saying a new data collection sheet has been submitted for review. It doesn't say who's filled it in or who it's about. It's very GDPR friendly, but you know you need to review a data collection sheet in Sims. I'm going to move Michelle's picture again. And I've got a little widget set up on my home page here that's also telling me that I've got a data collection sheet to deal with. And I can click into that and it's going to take me into the managing data collection screen in Sims. And I can see here that Kira Knightley has had her data collection sheet completed. You're absolutely the gatekeepers of the information. So nosebleeds is not just suddenly going to appear on her record, and nor is anything else that's been put into the app. You decide what comes into Sims and what doesn't. So it sits in a sort of pending area. And now this isn't the same data collection sheet that I've just filled in. Obviously, this is a PowerPoint from earlier, but on that occasion, I told the system that Kira has asthma. And that a new contact had added a new address as well. And what I can decide to do with the asthma is to either say, I can say save in Sims and marked as actioned. And what that will do, it will mark it back into Kira's medical record that she now has asthma. Or I can mark it as just actioned. And that is like, yes, I recognise you've given me that information, but I don't want to put it in Sims at the moment, or I need to make a change to it before it goes in Sims. So I'm going to mark it as saved in Sims and mark as actioned, and I can see now here it's popped it on the medical conditions of Kira's record. And then finally, the last thing I need to do on the data collection sheet is to mark it as closed. And what that does is it then notifies the parent that the data collection sheet has been managed, and they can now fill it in again if they want to. Okay, so are there any questions around that at all?
Emma was asking about the changes in the notifications. Did that answer that for you, Emma?
Oh, Emma's question around does the school get notified when a parent's made a change and what the change is? And they just get an email to say that there has been a change, and then the widgets, once you click on the widget on the home page, it will say what the changes are. Yeah, and you get to decide whether it comes into Sims. Thanks, Emma.
I think Kira has asked, are there any other apps available, such as School Comms? Do we have that information, Rachel?
So School Comms does have an app, but it won't write back into Sims. If you change the children's information, I'm not aware of any app that will write back into Sims. So a change of medical condition or whatever. I'm learning every day. So if someone knows of one, then do let me know. But as far as I'm aware, the parent app is the only one that will do write back into Sims.
Is there any other questions?
Okay.
I can see.
Okay, in which case I'm going to pass back to Michelle, I believe.
Oh, thank you very much. So we're just coming to the end now, and we're just going to sort of have a quick look at the services that we provide as an MIS team. So I'm just going to share my screen again, if you bear with me. So services. So obviously we do SIM support. That covers your remote and your telephone support. And with that SIM support, you could obviously possibly get training and consultancy. Sort of consultancy that we do as well is report writing and assessment solutions. We also develop and produce a reporting suite, which has a whole raft of reports that we've designed. And that's come out of really the needs of schools. And so we found that, you know, one school was asking for something and it was a multiple schools wanted it. And so therefore we've developed the reporting suite. And then we do obviously the single central record. In terms of the other MISs that we support, we do support Arbor and Integris and ScholarPack. We do remote telephone support for those. Something else that we could do as well is we have on occasion done MIS support to sort of be that stopgap interim when maybe you've lost a member of staff and you need somebody to help out in the school during those critical time periods, maybe to do a census, or maybe it's during admissions time of year, or just generally to keep the office running until you've recruited. We do the same as well for bursar services. That's only currently available in Buckinghamshire at the moment, I'm afraid, where we can obviously try and do that stopgap between staff, or if you've got long-term people off for any reason, we do that service as well. Something that we offer to everybody, regardless of what MIS we support, is we do remote workspaces at the moment. Before, obviously, lockdown, we were doing workspaces here at our offices in Princes Risborough and at Whitney, but now we're doing those remotely. So if anybody wants support with one-to-one sessions, we're doing those for the census and school workforce census, which is coming up later in the year. So do look out for those on our training schedule, and that is available via our customer portal. Not only do we have our training schedule listed on there so that you can have a look and see what we're delivering, we've also got a wealth of information, including a lot of how-do-I's, along with all of our guidance manuals. We post up there all of our census documentation, our end of years for finance and for Sims, and there's all the sorts of information you'd want to find on there and lots beside. So that's what we cover. Has anybody got any questions? Okay, I'm handing over to you then, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay, to turn it on, GDPR services are very, very similar to MIS. We've got quite a range of services available. First of all, we've got a dedicated GDPR help desk. That's open 5 days a week and throughout the year. The only couple of days it's not would be Easter and Christmas Day. Otherwise, we are here and we're available to ask any questions should you have a GDPR contract. We also have a school portal, and that's got lots of cybersecurity documents on it. That's also a place where you can always get the up-to-date policies which are available from Turn It On. We have on-site training, and that's for a range of reasons. It could be your annual update training, but we also cover specialist areas of training if they're required and they flag as an action for you. So that might be around how to handle subject access requests, how to deal with data breaches and so forth. We can come in and deliver those specific staff training sessions tailored to specific groups of staff as well. We regularly have GDPR webinars similar to this. We run hub events where when things return to some sort of normality, you can come into our offices. We have one of those every single term, so you can come in. We also have the workspace available where you can come in and get on with things like your data mapping, your GDPR toolkits, and a member of the team are around. So if you need to ask some questions, you can just tap into that. You get termly GDPR newsletters that I write and the team contribute to. They give you plenty of advice about how to be GDPR compliant and also provide important updates about things from the ICO, or such as recently the big changes with Google in the way they're storing their data for GDPR compliance. We've already mentioned it, but we produce our own dedicated education GDPR policy suite. Those are updated annually and they can be accessed through the portal. We have GDPR readiness and health check services. Most schools that took this option with us have already completed or on their way to completion, but we have that available should anybody want to get involved at this point. It's a all-encompassing database to map data collection as data controller and also data processing. We then offer bespoke GDPR consultancy. We're quite flexible. If you identify there's an area you'd like some support with, we can ask a consultant to come out and work with you, and that's a chargeable service depending on how long you need us for and the amount of time involved. In the DPO service, we have a dedicated DPO service. I am one of the DPOs of the company. There is another one as well. But you have access to us, and we are on call if you take the GDPR service and with DPO option enabled. You get unlimited telephone support. You can email us. We can jump on and give you remote support over the internet, and we can help to solve most GDPR issues. There's pretty much anything you're going to throw at us, we've seen it before. We've experienced something similar to it. We can give you quite a comprehensive support package with subject access requests when you receive them, how to handle them. We'll advise you if you'd like us to check things like redacted data. We can have a look at that for you as well. And the same goes with data breaches. If one occurs, it could be fairly minor. They can be quite big and catastrophic right the way through to getting your network crypto locked. We've got years of experience with that, and the GDPR DPO service will guide you through those tricky areas. We also provide an annual audit, and that can be written both remotely and on site, depending on the type of contract you have with us. And that gives you an action report highlighting what still needs to be completed, if there's anything that needs to be improved, and you can use that to then implement those changes in school. So we've got quite a few different services available. You may already have GDPR support with us, but if you don't and you are interested, please make contact on the normal inquiry, which is gdpr@turniton.co.uk, or you can phone, and that is on 01865 597 620, and to speak to the GDPR team, it is option 3. Any other questions? Just going to check the chat on the side.
Yeah, I was just say Jenny was just asking, I think I've responded to that one. Can you run staff training via Teams? For the MIS side of things, that's how we're going to be delivering in the autumn term. We have got our training schedule on the portal. If anybody else wants access to that, then let us know. So we will be doing all of our training in the autumn term via Teams at the moment, until we know what the situation will be in terms of everybody coming back down to the offices for training.
GDPR training can also be delivered via Teams. We also do it on Google Meet, and we are happy to come out to school if your risk assessments support that. So we've still got some schools that we're going to be visiting in the autumn term to give update training with social distancing accounted for. Any other questions? Anybody want to unmute a mic and ask a question? Silence. Okay. Well, that leaves me really to say a massive thank you for coming along this afternoon. We really do appreciate your time. We know you're all very busy, regardless of the role that you have in school. We hope it has been useful for you back on the MIS front and also GDPR front. But we will remain on the chat as you will drop off. And if anybody wants to ask any specific questions, please do so. we'll be here. Otherwise, have a safe afternoon, and we will see you all again soon, and I will stop the recording now.